So field notes in anthropology are incredibly important. When you're doing any kind of field work, you have to be taking copious notes about what it is that you're doing. Otherwise, you are going to forget what you did, and also you won't have any data when you come back to work with. Now, there are a variety of ways that you can take field notes. The probably most common way is to write them down in a notebook. We'll talk about a couple other alternative scenarios in just a second, but I wanted to show you my little pad that I have here, and I'll show you my personal way of taking field notes. Now, I'm an archaeologist, so my system of field notes may not work for all subdisciplines, for all projects. I use products from a company called Write in the Rain, which produce notebooks that have paper that will not, get waterlogged, tear, or smear when they get wet. And I think a lot of field workers in general use Write in the Rain paper or the equivalent paper. You can probably find it on Amazon. I actually went so far as to buy this little notepad cover for their books. You don't have to do that at all, but I like it because it keeps everything I need so very neatly organized. My notebook, a few other kind of supplies, pens, and a few other things that I often use in the field. So I'll go into some of the other things I bring with me, but I'll just sort of show you my actual notebook. This is what it looks like. This particular one is for geological work. I'm a geoarchaeologist, so it has a couple of things in there, just some charts and stuff in the back that are useful. You can just buy blank Write in the Rain notebooks. They come like this, which are bound hardcover. They come with soft cover, spiral bound, loose leaf. I just like them because the actual paper is very, 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 very durable. Internally, I like this one because it's got a sheet of actual graph paper on one side and then some ruled paper on the other side. As you can see, I don't often use them exactly the way that they're perhaps set up for. You can get them with just straight rules. You can get them with just straight graph paper. Again, this is going to vary depending on what it is you're doing in the field, what your preferences are. One thing that you should note is that I always put the name of the site. I typically put the date, although this particular day I did not put the date. And I do a lot of analyses of individual profiles and stuff. So I'll write a description of the location. I will note down any GPS points that I have for what I'm doing. And then I'll do my field drawing here, which is very important because a drawing really is worth 1,000 words. It really encapsulates what you're looking at in the field. In this case, it was a sediment profile. And I basically wrote down all of my studies of this. And then I often include overview maps. That's what you're looking at here. These are geomorphic maps of different kinds, showing the location in a sort of sketch fashion of where I was doing my, my actual field work. And you'll just see that I do this for multiple different places. And you can see I even did put dates and stuff on some of these, which is always very good. One thing to keep aware of is that you may be taking personal notes in a notebook like this, but you may actually have forms that are provided if you're working on a project, and in which case you may need like a 3-ring binder kind of a deal. And I happen to have a few forms that I use in the field over here, so I thought I'd just sort of briefly show you. Obviously, depending on whatever project that you're doing, forms may look different, but the forms are going to have headers at the top for you to enter information like name and date, location, and then they'll have a lot of the information that they want you to record basically already set up in whatever format the project wants you to actually record them in. So that's another way of taking notes that's not just sort of personal notebook. The other way of taking notes these days is largely digital, and I still occasionally use my book, but very often now I'm in the field with tablets, and I've set up recordation forms, and you simply swipe through them and you enter data. We do this a lot in our internships here in La Mesa. In fact, that's how you record the field data. And most of my field work now, I'm using tablets to record data. And that is nice because it helps me not forget, individual fields. Everything is standardized. It minimizes typos because it's form-based and you pull down and you check radio buttons. And you can incorporate photos and GPS in electronic format directly into the record. So there's no transcription that needs to happen once you get back into the lab, and fewer mistakes transcribing those kinds of information, the GPS data and that kind of stuff. Now, if you're still doing paper notes or you're still writing in a notebook, you can combine those with digital recordation, including photographs, with a DSLR camera or with even a phone, GPS handheld unit, that kind of stuff. You just have to be careful to cross-tabulate. So if you're taking photos, you need to note down the range of photo numbers, right? The actual names of the photos, so that later on they won't get separated. You can put them back on. If you're using GPS coordinates, you need to write them down in the book and save them on the GPS device so that you'll know. And later on, you have to make sure that you match up your paper notes to your digital notes. So you'll have to scan these to save an image file, and then you'll have to type them in by hand to some sort of written format. Now let's talk about other kinds of equipment that help you efficiently take notes in the field. Again, I bring this with me. Some people really like to use color pencils or pens when they're taking notes. I sometimes do that, but I almost always write in pencil. Some people are confident enough, they just write in pen. There is some advantages to writing in pen. It's a little bit more legible in some cases. It's darker. But if you make a mistake, you got to cross it out and it can get pretty messy. So I particularly like technical pens by Sanford or whatever, meant for drafting. Pencils, I mean. They're just mechanical pencils, which I prefer to regular pencils because you don't have to sharpen these in the field. Often you want to bring a backup or two because you're going to lose pencils. I occasionally will do a few things in pen. So I use these technical pens. Again, these are very, very fine grained pens like so. I often always have bigger Sharpies to write on bags and stuff as an archaeologist. But those are not usually in my note-taking kit. That's with my artifact analysis kit. I take a lot of photographs, so I always bring with me a north arrow, two in this case, so that I can say which way is north in the photo. And I often, sorry I dropped this, bring a scale for taking photos of artifacts, etc. And there are other things that one could bring with you into the field. Again, I do a lot of sediment analysis, so I bring a geotechnical gauge for doing that kind of stuff. I bring a hand lens so that I can look at the sediment, and I bring a multi-tool because you always need one of those things. So depending on what you're doing, you may need binoculars, you may need a video camera, you may need an audio recorder. All of those things are important to keep organized and to keep with you so that when you get to where you're going to do the thing that you're there to do, that you can do it with the minimal amount of fuss. Finally, what I'd like to say is however you take notes, whether you use a digital tablet, an audio recorder, whether you're taking video notes, whether you're taking photographs, whether you're writing things down, it's important to be consistent and to learn the medium that you're using for your note-taking well. So if you're going to take photographs, it's important that you know how to work the camera to get the exposures right. If you're going to take video, you need to make sure that you set it up, that it's tripod or whatever it is, so you're not getting shake. If you're using audio, make sure that the levels are all set. If you're writing by hand, you got to make sure that your handwriting is at least legible to yourself and hopefully legible to other people. What I will say is that I am not the best person with handwriting skills, which is one of the other reasons why I'm switching to mostly digital recordation techniques with forms on tablet computers, simply because there's less chance of even my own self, and my future self, misreading what it is that I wrote down in the notebook. There are some situations where it's probably not appropriate to use digital recordation techniques. There may be privacy concerns. There may be difficulty getting tech into the place that you're going to. But these days, I think it's pretty straightforward to do that in most scenarios. And I highly encourage you, if you pursue any of this stuff, to consider switching over to digital media for your recordation. But until that time, or if you don't prefer that kind of method, work on your handwriting, buy a good notebook, and make sure you provide lots and lots and lots of details, and make sure that it's written in a way that can be understood by somebody, not just yourself, but somebody else in the future.